Hello guys and welcome to this new video. In this video we are going to be taking a wild guess on where the meta is going right now. Obviously we don't have an idea yet because, at least for myself, I haven't really scrimmed yet. We've played a few, but a certain meta has not developed yet. We're still in a very young age of season 5. Still very new. They're changing everything up every so often, so we'll definitely change from what I'm going to guess, but we're gonna be taking a guess, and we'll try and get some good solid arguments around how and why we think this is going to happen, and we'll eventually update this video with more videos. But let's talk about that in a later stage of the video. Also, I want to mention that this is mainly the support meta. We'll briefly touch on the meta. And like in the early game, we're not going to go over how the solo laner starts and how the jungler starts. We're going to be going over support starts. We'll also be talking about like more for the whole team when we get when we get into like the mid game and the late game metas. So we also have some overall changes we need to go through real fast before talking about the actual meta and how these changes might influence the meta. The biggest one is obviously the buff spawners right now, buff timers. The big buffs, which is speed buff, red buff, blue buff, and purple buff, have been changed. So they are now 2 minutes instead of 3 minutes. This means they're obviously up a lot more often, which means you have more farm on the map. Also creates more incentive for the jungler to actually jungle, especially because XP camps are now 60 seconds and mid camps are now 90 seconds. So mid camps have actually gone from 3 minutes to 90 seconds, which is pretty crazy. Oracle stays the same. Same goes for objectives. Fire Giant, Gold Fury, Pyromancer are all still the same as they were before. So I think the buff timers being so low right now actually means that you can run kill lanes in duo lane, where you can just constantly invade and get a really big lead of the early game in duo, at least, because the buffs will always be up. So you can go like clear wave, go for the red buff, clear wave, go for the purple buff, clear wave, go for your own red buff, clear wave, go for your like red buff, clear wave, go for that and red buff, and you can kind of keep this rotation going. So there definitely is merit to having 2 people in the duo lane right now for a longer period of time as well, just because you can kind of constantly rotate out and do something. One thing that I've seen a lot, which actually also happened in season 4, especially in ranked, is that Oracle seems to be neglected, whereas in competitive they are like very highly valued, having Oracle control. The main reason why it was, and probably still will be, so much more contested in competitive gameplay is because once you get the oracles once, you're probably going to be getting them for a long time, which means that if you want to push that gold fairy, you can probably do that if you have a sentry ward on it, whereas they can't really do it if the oracles are up. So it's more about getting the timer than the actual farm, because holy shit, it takes a while to kill the oracles right now. And we're gonna be talking a bit about the bigger map as well. Well, the bigger map is it's vertical, right? That's how you say it. Yeah, so like still the same distance between the titans. It's just a lot wider now, the map. I think it means that definitely the new boots are going to be better, so that might become kind of meta. It's kind of harder now to rotate from one side of the map to the other, which means TP might see a little comeback into the meta. Not for supports, obviously. I don't think you're going to see support so much around in solo lane as there were before, where fire imps used to be, which is not a thing anymore. You'll probably not see them too much in the solo side of the map. They'll mainly be in the duo jungle, like kind of jungling around in the duo jungle. That's a very nice, very delicious voice crack. Let's keep going. Gold and XP scaling. So buffs and minions now scale, as we talked about in the PTS update video. How do we think this will influence the meta? So I tried to like do this graphically, but if you imagine that you have a bar which is like 100% or whatever, it could be a phone battery, then in the previous season probably 40% of that was early game, and probably 40% was mid game, and 20-30% was late game. what happens in this meta in season 5 is that 40% is early game, 20% is mid game, and 40% is late game. There's a very mid game is pretty much non-existent. It's like a bridge period of like 5 to 10 minutes at like 10 minutes max before you actually get into what I would consider late game. Late game is when you start to get tier 2s down, you start to pressure Phoenixes, you're getting fired, and you're starting to move away from gold through and playing around other objectives, starting to push towers. That's when I consider it the late game, or like very late mid game. So we'll see slower games in the start, and then we'll see a lot faster as the game progresses. So next up on the list is the early game. The early game, I want to talk about the first 3 to 4 minutes. That's before you get your first back in. What do you do as a support? People still ask me, can you still start 2 people in mid? And I think you might be able to. I haven't tried it myself yet. I'd have to try that. That's those things where you really need to like try it out before you can say something. I haven't really been able to, because I haven't been playing with like a full team where we thought, let's try and start the support mid and see what happens. This might become a strat. I think there's less merit to it now, because you can kind of ping pong between buffs so hard in dual lane right now, which is super strong. And it's not really a secret that ADCs are a lot better. Maybe not now. They should still be better though early game than mages, so you'd rather pressure with your ADC. So there's a few different starts you can do as a support. You can start on the red with your ADC. Now I really like the red start, because what it does is that even if the enemy dual lane starts on the wave, you're going to clear the red before they can come to the red. If they go for your purple, you can actually probably just kill them, because you have a red buff, and you can like possibly just steal the purple as well. Losing a wave for a red buff is totally fine if you steal away the purple. The good thing about starting on red is that you'll have that red buff for pressure. So if the enemy dual lane doesn't start lane and then instantly just goes and do their own red, they're going to be pretty screwed over, and they're going to have to rotate out. Another really big thing right now is I see a lot of mid laners push out the first wave and just invade the enemy red buff if they get clear. So actually getting that red buff down means that the enemy mid laner won't be able to do this and get off to such a strong start. So I think the red start is the best one right now. You're going to lose some wave, lose some of the wave, and I think the worst thing about it is you're going to take quite a bit of tower damage now, because minions kind of hurt that tower. It's pretty ridiculous. The other side you can do is the lane start, as I talked about. Now I think the lane start definitely has merit to it if you have high clear. If you feel like you can still fight into the enemy dual lane with red buff, you should probably do it. If you don't, you should just fall back to your own red buff. I would recommend doing the purple as well, and then you probably have to go the safe way behind your towers, and the enemy dual lane is probably going to get oracles or something for that. So I think red start is all the strongest right now, and after red you just want to go straight to lane. Unless the enemy dual lane is also starting on red, you can kind of just take purple on the way. So one really big question right now for the early game, like the really early game, is how do you get level 2? And I know that like it's a lot harder to get level 2 now. Well, I guess we all know that. You don't get level 2 if you just clear 2 waves. You don't clear or get level 2 if you clear back cams, red and purple buff. So what you actually need to do is you need to do, this is the one way I really like doing it, is you can do 2 waves and 2 babies, like 2 sides of a camp. So you start in lane, clear 2 waves, assuming the enemies are also starting in lane. Then go and take the side camps off the buff, and if they walk in, you're going to hit level 2, and they won't. So you can kind of take that fight. That's a really scary timing right now. Other ways to hit level 2 is you could do red purple and a wave. I'm not sure if that's even enough. It would depend. That would be relevant with the red start. If, by the way, the red start happens and the enemy team is not going to invade your purple, just start the purple buff, but go inside the purple, like really very deep, so you can get the minion XP over the wall, and that way you'll be closer to hitting level 2, and you can also push out the next wave and make sure you get the oracles, so it kind of makes up for you losing some minions to tower. So keeping on going about the early game, like how and when do you rotate now? I think you're going to see less rotations from supports. Supports are going to be more stationary, double farming. You have to take like neutral congestion, I guess, into consideration. Do I contest the mid camps? Yes, you probably want to get mid camp control as much as possible, which means there's more merit to being in mid lane, at least after the first 4 or 5 minutes, after I would say the first 2 or 3 buff respawns of the red and purple buff. So stay around mid, get those mid camps, rotate out for them if you're in dual lane. Oracle's also really important still. So this is like when you wanna rotate. If you want to rotate all the way on the other side of the map, it's because that you're constantly losing your speed buff and the enemy junglers ahead. You want to try and relieve pressure of the blue buff as well. It could be rotate over, make sure that you don't lose that, and sure, you might lose a mid camp on the other side of the map, but if you can ensure your jungler is going to start getting his speed buff, or your mana hungry soul laner is going to get his blue, you also want to rotate out for that. So definitely a lot harder now, I think. With the rotations, we're going to see how everything works out. I think you want to stay with your ADC for a while and kind of try and get one of the mid camps with your ADC, and after that I guess you can just stay around mid, and then you'll be like, you'll have more freedom to rotate out from mid, whether it be to the soul lane, to help out with the blue buff, or towards the dual lane. Next up is mid game. So mid game is a bit tricky right now because it's actually not very long, in my opinion at least. I think mid game starts around 15 minutes now or something like that. It's when everyone's like kind of hitting their level 12, getting their second relic out. It's early mid game. Whenever that starts, pretty much ends. I say mid game ends when you stop playing around goal 3 and you kind of swap your attention to fire giant sieges or actual tower sieges. So obviously the biggest point about mid game right now is the objective play. How do we want to play objectives as a support? Obviously you want to try and stay around objectives as much as possible as you can in the mid game, especially if you don't have wards on it. You can kind of use yourself as a stationary ward. That was a really good strat last season, and it definitely will be a strat again this season. So I think that there will be less gold furies taken in like early on, or like less gold fury fights. So that's definitely going to change from a support objective. One thing you wanna like really look out for is stacking Phoebes in the mid game as well. Obviously this is going to be the early mid game when you're gonna get your Phoebes out. Just run around with your mid laner ADC while you're stacking your Phoebes. You don't really want to fight when you have your Phoebes, as I explained in the builds guide as well. So just take a deep breath, you know, just hold back a bit, pull the handbrake, just make sure you get those Phoebe stacks up and running. And then as soon as you have that, you can kind of start fighting after. And that's when you want to like force the objective. If you have that Phoebes, I have that L12 on the enemy support. I think there's more merit also now to like sieging towers, because they're a lot more squishy. You'll probably see a lot more tier 2 sieges early on, whereas late game, not late game, sorry, last season it was actually a lot better to just get the speed buff or get the red buff, where it's a lot worse now that they're worth less and towers are still pretty much worth the same. Up on the list of the different game stages now is the late game. Now, as I defined already in this video, late game is when you're really getting to push down these towers. It might be Phoenix pushes now, because it's a lot easier to siege tier 2 towers in my opinion. But like late game you want to push towers obviously, and you actually want to play around buffs a bit. I just said that buffs are a lot worse now, but that's for XP and gold. A red buff is still super strong late game. A speed buff, even purple buff is even stronger right now. Blue buff as well. So one thing you want to make sure, if you're in the late game and you're having a lead, you want to make sure that you actually get the enemy's buffs on cooldown. This is going to deny them farm, you're getting the farm, and most importantly, you're getting the buffs. I think the changes we'll see is that you'll see a lot more split pushing, and you'll see a lot more succeeded sieges. It was really hard to siege last split in season 4, because Phoenixes were actually so tanky, and on top of that there was a very small distance to be traveled from the fountain to the Phoenix, whereas that distance almost doubled now. So I think we'll see more succeeded pushes, and I think we'll see less Phoenix attempts or more Phoenix attempts as following, as it will be easier, and I think we'll see less kind of fighting around Fire Giant now, as it's so easy to go somewhere else on the map and kind of get like a tier 2 tower and above and maybe a gold fairy. It wasn't really that easy to do last time, because then you could just kind of rotate over to gold whenever they were done doing fire, or like whether it be on the other side of the map or not. So I think we'll see less fighting around the jungle bosses, like the jungle objectives, which is fire, pyro, and gold. We'll still see some, obviously, when the team are neutral, but you'll try and see the losing team is probably going to play the map really wide, try and like just split push it up. Also, one thing I've heard a lot is people have been complaining about snowball, and I want to say the game is really snowbally, but there's also never been a better like meta for comebacks. I see it so often. I think the anti-snowball is even better. If you get one wiping fight and you're 10k behind, you might end up being 5k ahead after that little sequence. Whereas in Season 4, it was really hard to do something with picks if you're like 10k down. It's gonna be a lot easier now, and I like that. You actually get punished if you play like pretty cocky or whatever, I guess you can say, in the late game, and I really like that. So the game is snowbally, but the game is also snowbally for comebacks, right? I think comebacks are more likely, and if you do get a comeback or like a winning fight as you're down, I also think you're more likely to actually turn around the game. One thing I think they'll have a lot more merit now is the 1-4 split during sieges. This is basically means send someone like a global old jungler, which could be Ratatoska, it could be Thor, it could even be like Invis guards like Morgan. Go and send them split pushing. Go send them to another Phoenix while you're pushing, so they can force someone over. And since the distance they need to travel now is a bit greater between the Phoenixes, you can kind of just outplay them on one side and you'll force them to rotate over, which is super bad for them. Although there is that one gap now in between the Phoenixes, which you could access without getting hit by the Phoenix before, which you can't now. That might play to the defending side's advantage. But definitely try and split the map a bit more now, even when you're ahead. Lastly, late game, and this goes for all games, wards is definitely going to play a big factor. I think wards could or probably should see some changing. But we'll have more about that. We'll do a video on warding, where to ward, what I think should happen towards later. I think it might be out next week actually, so make sure you keep an eye on that. So I have some essential questions, I guess you can say. The biggest one I've heard is people are asking, do I still split? Do you still 2-man split? Do you still 3-man split? So they changed it so now you don't gain 150, or like you don't generate 50% more XP from 2-man, 3-man, or 4-man splitting, 5-man splitting. You only gain 120 now, so it's 30% less. So the answer would be yes, you'd still split, but if, let's say, a back camp is up now and there's a mid wave, you probably just want to go and clear the back camp, assuming the mid laner can go and farm something else after his mid wave. Because with buff respawns being so much lower, it actually doesn't hurt your team at all. If you can just keep all your buffs on constant respawn, that's a lot better than making sure you 2-man share every wave on the map. So I really like that change. So splitting is still definitely worth it if there's nothing else to farm on the map, if that makes sense. Another essential question is I'm getting a lot is Guardians RIP. Everyone's like, is Guardians really bad now? And I don't think so. You just build even more tanky, which like leads me to the next question. Do I even build tanky now because of percentage pen being like really strong, 45%? It's kind of ouch. You do. This just gives you even more like, you should want to build more tanky now. You don't want to stop at like 175 protection or whatever. You just want to keep going after that. There's no point in stopping at 174. I guess I can show this graph as well here. So as you can see, like, it would make no sense to stop when you finally hit the cap. You know, you should probably just keep going. So yeah, just keep going. You know, keep building tanky. Try and get like over 250 prots, and you're actually going to be pretty a-okay. So also I wanted to mention that we will be doing a tier list eventually after like a few weeks, kind of a first impression tier list, and it will be really interesting because I think assassins and warriors in particular are going to do a lot better in support this meta. So we'll see about how that goes. So make sure you keep a follow and an eye out on the tier list. So basically I just wanted to like kind of advertise a few videos we'll definitely have coming out as kind of a follow-up as we did with the whole builds video. You guys should really go and check that out. It's super nice, kind of showing you guys how to build this far in season 5, like what I think will be good. We'll be doing the tier list, we'll be doing the wards. I'll actually also be doing a video on objective play and how to position around objective play, in particular fire giants and gold fairies, etc. We'll be doing a video on different game play styles, and we'll be doing on different starts, pros and cons, like what is good. Like you guys had a video with Duke slot pretty much last season. It was like the different starts. You could Cobra, you could Dolphin, you could do whatever, you know. We had different names for the starts. But yeah, I just wanted to thank you guys so much for watching this video. Again, I hope you guys like this kind of new content with the game running in the background and everything. So if you did, make sure to leave a like, comment, subscribe, and press the bell. It really helps out a ton. So as always, thank you so much for watching, and until next time, peace out.